shortened version. All right, let's look at Muhammad and this is important. This is the most common argument you hear for Islam. This is the argument Nabeel used to give. I sat through an entire presentation of Nabeel. We argued this forever, and it's weird because this is about fact versus fiction in Islam. And this is just the weirdest argument I think anyone who's read the Quran could ever come up with. And you'll see why here in a moment. And we're going to look at three categories. One, we're going to look at Muhammad's universe. And Nabeel's already brought up some of these points in these different areas. You're going to get kind of an overview of what Muhammad's universe looks like. And then we're going to look at Muhammad on human reproduction. Nabeel already touched on that as well, but we'll get kind of the big picture on what Muhammad taught about reproduction. And maybe I'll cut the last part out and just focus on those two issues so we can move on to some other things. Muhammad's universe. So what's down at the bottom of stuff? You read this little interesting verse in the Quran, Surah 68 verse 1. It says, Nun, by the pen and by the record which men write. Now, what's that mean? It doesn't get translated. It's just written as Nun in copies of the Quran. But if you go to the earliest commentators, Muhammad's companions, and what they said, we know what that means. It's talking about the fish. It's talking about the big fish. So this is Ibn Abbas. This is the founder of Quranic studies, one of Muhammad's companions. There is no real greater authority on the interpretation of the Quran in earlier Islam than Ibn Abbas. And he says, Allah swears by the Nun, which is the whale that carries the earths on its back while in water, and beneath which is the bull, and under the bull is the rock, and under the rock is the dust, and none knows what is under the dust save Allah. So this is what's at the bottom of the universe, according to the understanding of Muhammad's companions and what he meant by these verses. Notice that it says earths there, carries the earths. Yes, there's more than one earth. Quran 65:12, Allah is He who created 7 heavens and of the earth the like of them. So there are also 7 earths. In Jami' at-Tirmidhi, Muhammad explains what the situation's like. So Muhammad says to one of his followers, do you know what is under you? They said, Allah and His Messenger know better. He said, indeed, it is the earth. Okay, Muhammad got something right. The earth is under you. Then he said, do you know what is under that? Now here's where we have an opportunity to test whether Muhammad knew what he was talking about. Do you know what is under that? They said, Allah and His Messenger know better. He said, verily below it is another earth, between the two of which is a distance of 500 years. Until he enumerated 7 earths. Between every 2 earths is a distance of 500 years. So, we have here from the beginning, giant fish down below the earths, and then 7 earths stacked on top of each other with a journey of 500 years in between each one of them. The earth is flat, according to Muhammad. So here we have a couple passages from the Quran. He who has made for you the earth like a carpet spread out, and Allah has made the earth for you as a carpet spread out, and here's the key. Do they never reflect on the camels and how they were created, the heaven, how it was raised high, the mountains, how they were set down, the earth, how it was made flat? And up until Muslims really knew because of astronomy what the situation was, the Muslim commentators were clear. No, this is telling us what the earth is, and it's flat. This is one of the greatest Islamic commentators, Tafsir Jalalain, on the meaning of this. And he explicitly says it's flat and condemns the views of the astronomers who say the earth is round. So it says, as for his word, sutahat, laid out flat, this on a literal reading suggests that the earth is flat, which is the opinion of most of the scholars of the revealed law. So scholars of the Quran say it means the earth is flat. And not a sphere, as astronomers have it, even if this latter does not contradict any of the pillars of the law. So what's the word mean? It means flat. That's what the earth is, and that's what all 7 earths are. So, Tafsir of Ibn Abbas gives his commentary. Allah it is who hath created 7 heavens, one above the other like a dome, and of the earth thereof, the like thereof, 7 earths, but they are flat. So, what do we have so far? You've got a giant fish, 7 flat earths stacked on top of each other, like a stack of pancakes, but with some space in between them. That's Muhammad's universe so far. Quran 36, verse 38 through 40. When the sun runs its course for a period determined for it, That is the decree of him, the exalted in might, the all-knowing. And the moon we have measured for it mansions to traverse, till it returns like the old and withered lower part of a date stalk. It is not permitted to the sun to catch up the moon, nor can the night outstrip the day. Each just swims along in its own orbit, according to law. So you have the sun and the moon in their own orbits, kind of chasing each other, but the sun can never catch up. So you have the sun and the moon going around the earth, one chasing the other, but they don't catch up. It's probably my favorite. Surah 18, 83 through 86. They asked thee concerning Dual Qarnayn. That's Alexander the Great. That's how they refer to Alexander the Great. They asked thee concerning Dual Qarnayn. Say, I will rehearse to you something of his story. Verily, we established his power on earth, and we gave him the ways and means to all ends. One such way he followed until, when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water. Near it he found a people. So, according to the Quran, if you travel far enough west, you will eventually reach the place where the sun sets, and you'll find it sets in a pool of murky water. And there are people who live there. That's pretty interesting. And interesting, there are other myths during Muhammad's time about this pool that the sun goes down into. So it was fairly common during that time. Surah 37. By the way, some people are writing frantically to try and get all these references down. If you don't get it, I'll send you the PowerPoint. You can have the PowerPoint if you want it. And then you'll have all the references. Surah 37, we have indeed, you already heard this from Nabil, I think, we have indeed decked the lower heaven with beauty and the stars, for beauty and for guard against all obstinate, rebellious, evil spirits, so they should not strain their ears in the direction of the exalted assembly, but be cast away from every side, repulsed, for they are under a perpetual penalty, except such as snatch away something by stealth, and they are pursued by a flaming fire of piercing brightness. So that's what a shooting star is. And a shorter one, Surah 67:5, and we have from of old adorned the lowest heaven with lamps, the stars. And we have made such lamps as missiles to drive away the evil ones, and have prepared for them the penalty of blazing fire. According to the Quran, stars, the ones you see in the sky, are missiles that God uses to hurl at demons when a demon tries to sneak and listen in paradise. And when you see a shooting star, it's because Allah or one of the angels became angry and hurled a star. There are multiple problems with that. Stars aren't meteorites, and they have nothing to do with going after evil spirits. But just anyone wants to, in case anyone wants to give an alternative interpretation, one of Muhammad's companions gave the Muslim interpretation of this. So this is Sahih al-Bukhari. Abu Qatada, mentioning Allah, saying, and indeed we have adorned the nearest heaven with lamps, quoting the Quran and explaining what it means, said, the creation of these stars is for three purposes. There are three purposes for stars. They are, one, as a decoration of the nearest heaven. No problem there. As missiles to hit the devils. Something wrong there. And as signs to guide travelers. No problem there. And notice what he says. There is a contempt for science. Remember, in Jalalain, this is what people who know the Quran know. We know that the earth is flat, unlike those astronomers who think it's a sphere. Because we know the Quran, and it tells us what's right, not these guys practicing their science. Watch how he concludes. So, if anybody tries to find a different interpretation, he is mistaken and just wastes his effort and troubles himself with what is beyond his limited knowledge. If you want to find some other explanation other than stars are missiles that God uses to shoot demons, you're wasting your time. You'll never do it. Jami at-Tirmidhi, Muhammad says, again, do you know what is above you? So he's already explained what's below them, 7 earths. Do you know what is above you? They said, Allah and his messenger know better. He said, indeed, it is a preserved canopy of the firmament whose surge is restrained. Then he said, do you know how much is between you and it? They said, Allah and his messenger know better. He said, between you and it is the distance of 500 years. Then he said, do you know what is above that? They said, Allah and his messenger know better. He said, verily, above that are 2 heavens. Between the 2 of them, there's a distance of 500 years. Until he enumerated 7 heavens, what is between each of the 2 heavens is what is between the heavens and the earth. So what he means here, he's referring to 7 domes, higher and higher, above the earth. And it's interesting, these are actually solid objects that could fall on you if Allah didn't hold them up. So we find this in the Quran. Surah 22:65. Do you not see that Allah has made subservient to you whatever is in the earth and ships running by the sea at his command, and he withholds the heaven from falling on the earth except with his permission. Most surely Allah is compassionate and merciful to men. So Allah holds the heaven up so it doesn't fall on us. And Surah 34:9, see they not what is before them and behind them of the earth and of the sky and of the earth? If we wish, we could cause the earth to swallow them up or cause a piece of the sky to fall upon them. So these are solid objects, and there are 7 of them stacked up like domes on top of the earth. Sunan Abu Dawud 47:05, here's what's at the top. If you wonder what's on top of the domes, no problem. It tells us, above the 7th heaven there is a sea, the distance between whose surface and bottom is like that between one heaven and the next. Above that there are 8 mountain goats, the distance between whose hoofs and haunches is like the distance between one heaven and the next. Then Allah, the Blessed and the Exalted, is above that. So there are 8 mountain goats above these 7 heavens, giant ones that are the size of the heavens, and Allah is on top of that. He's according to Muhammad, whom Muslims appeal to as the epitome of scientific understanding and reason. So let's kind of put all of this together to get Muhammad's overall picture of the entire universe. According to Muhammad, there are 7 earths. That's false. All of them are flat. It's false. Stacked on top of each other like pancakes. False, except with a long distance between them. False. Out on the edge of that top earth is a pool. False. Where the sun sets. That's false. There are 7 heavens above the earth. That's false. Like domes that will fall on us if God doesn't hold them up. That's false. And the lowest heaven are the stars, which God uses to hurl at demons. That's false. All of this is sandwiched between a giant fish, which is false, and 8 giant goats. False. That's Muhammad's picture of the universe if you put it all together. What did Muhammad get right? Other than there is a sun, and there is a moon, and there are stars, and there is an earth, which any 5-year-old could have told you, Muhammad got everything wrong that he could possibly get wrong. And Muslims look at this somehow and say, this is clear proof that the Quran is the word of God. What?
You said Muslims look at this, but do Muslims know any of this?
If they read I'm saying Muslims who read the Quran, so Zakir Naik, they read this and they still proclaim the Quran is. They don't say this, the fact that there are 7 earths is clear proof. But they still look at all of this and say, this Quran, this book, is our proof, when this is the picture of astronomy presented in the Quran. And there's something very weird about that. But it's not just in astronomy. Let's check out human reproduction. Surah 86, 5-7. Nabil already brought this up. This is the verse that says that semen is created between the backbone and the ribs. It's not. So we'll look at some others. Sahih Muslim 608. Man's discharge, i.e. sperm, is thick and white, and the discharge of women is thin and yellow. So men have a discharge and women have a discharge, according to Muhammad. And this explains a lot of things. Watch. Salama said, O Allah's apostle, Allah does not refrain from saying the truth. Is it obligatory for a woman to take a bath after she gets nocturnal discharge? He says, yes, if she notices the discharge. Salama smiled and said, does a woman get discharge? Allah's apostle said, then why does a child resemble its mother? So children resemble their mother sometimes because women have this reproductive fluid in the same sense that men do. If it's not clear, you'll see what he means here. Sahih Muslim 33:29, Allah's apostle said, this is an interesting passage because in this passage he specifically asked as a challenge, if you're a prophet and you can get revelations from God, tell us why a child sometimes resembles the father and other times resembles the mother. Can you tell us this? And Muhammad says, yes, Gabriel just told me. Note, Gabriel is supposedly the source of all of Muhammad's revelation. So if he did not have a reliable source of information in Gabriel, something's wrong. So, Muhammad claims, I just got the answer from Gabriel. Gabriel has just now told me of the answers to these questions. As for the resemblance of the child to its parents, if a man has sexual intercourse with his wife and gets discharged first, the child will resemble the father. And if the woman gets discharged first, the child will resemble her. On that, Abdullah bin Salam said, I testify that you are the apostle of Allah. Someone converted based on this. Muhammad said it with such confidence, it must be correct. By the way, Nabil, is this correct? Is this a correct picture?
No.
Of course not. Had to go to the head of appeal to someone with an MD for verification. But no, that's not what determines a child's appearance during reproduction. Sahih Muslim 61:14, Muhammad said, the reproductive substance of a man is white and that of a woman yellow. And when they have sexual intercourse and the male substance prevails upon the female substance, it is the male child that is created by Allah's decree. And when the substance of the female prevails upon the substance contributed by the male, a female child is formed by the decree of Allah. So not only is the appearance, but also the gender is determined by which substance, the male substance or the female substance, prevails. Nabil, is that right? Okay. Yeah, it's the sperm. That's what decides it. The male sperm decides gender of the child. So this is just flat out wrong. He's making claims that are totally false. And you can't even stretch these interpretations to make them somehow right. Quran 22:5. Consider that we created you out of dust, then out of sperm, then out of a leech-like clot, then out of a morsel of flesh, partly formed and partly unformed, in order that we may manifest our power to you. So, out of dust, then out of sperm, then out of a leech-like clot, then out of a morsel of flesh, partly formed and partly unformed. Let's look at another passage, 40:67. It is he who has created you from dust. So that sounds like it refers to the original creation of human beings. Then you get created from a sperm drop, then from a leech-like clot. Then does he get you out into the light as a child. And Muslims will pick out parts of these verses and say, Muhammad knew that semen had something to do with human reproduction. It's a miracle. Look at how much he gets wrong here. Quran 23. Man did we create from a quintessence of clay, then we placed him as a drop of sperm in a place of rest firmly fixed. Then we made the sperm into a clot of congealed blood. Then of that clot we made a fetus lump. Then we made out of that lump bones and clothed the bones with flesh. Then we developed out of it another creature. So blessed be Allah, the best creator. If you've taken biology, you should see error after error after error there. No, there is no congealed blood stage during embryonic development. You don't become bones and then those bones are wrapped in flesh. They develop at the same time as everything else is being developed. So all these areas where we can test whether Muhammad knew what he was talking about turns out to be wrong. Sahih Muslim, Muhammad said, Allah the Exalted and Glorious has appointed an angel as the caretaker of the womb. And he would say, my Lord, it is now a drop of semen. So an angel is reporting on the development of the fetus. Allah the Exalted and Glorious has appointed an angel as caretaker of the womb, and he would say, my Lord, it is now a drop of semen. So that's the first step. My Lord, it is now a clot of blood. That's second. Remember the congealed blood stage. My Lord, it has now become a lump of flesh. And when Allah decides to give it a final shape, the angel says, my Lord, would it be male or female, or would he be an evil or good person? Notice, whether the child is male or female isn't decided until after the child is a little baby, a little tiny baby in the womb. That's totally wrong. That's totally false. It's there from the beginning. As soon as the sperm joins with the egg, the gender has been determined. Sahih al-Bukhari, Allah's apostle, the true and truly inspired, said, the matter of creation of a human being is put together in the womb of the mother in 40 days, and then he becomes a clot of thick blood for a similar period. So the first stage is the semen stage. That lasts 40 days. Then you enter into the clot of congealed blood stage, which lasts another 40 days. These aren't quite right. Sahih Muslim again, Allah the Exalted and Glorious has appointed an angel as the caretaker of the womb, and he would say, my Lord, I read that. Okay. So let's put all of this together. So now we have Muhammad's entire picture of the universe. Now we have Muhammad's entire picture of human reproduction. Semen forms between the backbone and ribs. That's false. Then it joins with the female semen. false. And whichever one is discharged first determines which parent the child will resemble. That's wrong. The child spends 40 days as a drop of sperm. That's false and ridiculous. Then the child spends another 40 days as a clot of blood. That's false. Then the child becomes a lump. That's false. Then the child becomes bones. That's false. Then the bones are wrapped with flesh. That's false. And finally, once the shape is determined, God finally decides whether the child will be male or female. Once again, what did Muhammad get right? Other than semen has something to do with human reproduction, and human reproduction occurs when a man gets together with a woman, Muhammad got absolutely everything wrong. And some of it's just silly, and some of it, there were plenty of people during his time who could have told him better. It's just one error after another. And I had another section on the science, yes? First, I would say no, most Muslims do not know this. Almost every Muslim I met doesn't know the basics of the Quran. They'll go to mosque, they'll do their prayers. But as far as studying carefully and knowing what the Quran says, I know much more about the Quran than the average Muslim I meet. So it's rare for a Muslim to actually know about what the Quran teaches. As for people who become doctors, I find they rarely know all that much about the Quran. And those who do know about the Quran and do make it to high levels of education, it just seems that you're raised all your life to believe that this is true. And so, well, if this sounds wrong, it must be I'm just misinterpreting it. I must be interpreting it wrong. God knows better. God knows better what he means, and somehow this must be right. Point is, it's just not. I mean, it's a totally wrong picture. Yeah.
There's a lot of
No, back.
a lot of groups that want to make pamphlets and make all type of prints, and on the internet try to justify against what it says.
Mm-hmm.
In any way possible, and people believe it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the problem is, so a Muslim will take the passage in the Quran, and this is the real problem I see. A Muslim will take a passage in the Quran, let's say stars are missiles, and then totally try to reinterpret it. What he's ignoring is both Muhammad and his companions in the Hadith explained exactly what he meant. Here's what it means. And so you have these other passages in the Quran that are talking about human reproduction. And Muslims will come up with all these creative reinterpretations to try and reconcile it with modern science. The problem is Muhammad said exactly what these passages meant. He gave many comments on these verses. And so Muhammad explained what he meant, and according to Muhammad's explanation, these are obviously wrong. And according to Islam, Muhammad is the greatest interpreter of the Quran. That's foundational. Muhammad's the best interpreter, not some doctor today. So it's just, yes, you find it all over the internet, and it seems to be like a campaign of how we can rescue these texts, but I wish Muslims would dig a little deeper.
And he twists the language as well.
Yes, no question. Yeah, yeah.
The verses you just had on prior slides, talking about weed created. Who's the weed here?
Muslims will say that refers to the plural of majesty, the royal we, the way the Queen of England will speak on behalf of the country and say we, which is kind of weird because it makes sense when the Queen of England says it. She's saying we because she is the representative of all of the people, and therefore she can say we. So it is kind of weird to say that Allah is using this royal we when Allah supposedly has no peers. But that's just the Muslim response. This is a royal sense of we. Yeah.
Just regarding some of the sources,
Yeah, so you have the Quran, but also authoritative are Muhammad's teachings. And so I quoted the most reliable sources on the teachings of Muhammad, to fill in the details of Muhammad's overall picture. So a Muslim has to, Muhammad's claiming to get some of these from Gabriel when he's teaching these things. So you can round them out. You put what the Quran says together with what the Hadith say, and you get the beginning to end process.
Are Muslims bound to believe everything that he says in the I don't like that. Still.
If Muhammad said it, they're kind of stuck with it. There are rare instances where they can claim that Muhammad was, just speaking on his own. But generally, if Muhammad said it, it's considered authoritative. What they can do is they can say, Muhammad never really said that. Someone made this up centuries later and put it in the mouth of Muhammad. But that's why we quote the most reliable sources, because these are the ones that supposedly officially go back to Muhammad. These are in the sources that give us, according to Muslims, the most reliable information about Muhammad. So if I read 10 passages from Sahih al-Bukhari and a Muslim tells me, no, none of that ever happened, I say, well, don't tell me that you know anything about Muhammad because you just said that's your best source. If that's your best source about Muhammad and you're telling me I can't trust anything in it, don't tell me you know anything about it, because from the Quran you know next to nothing about Muhammad. It comes from the Hadith. That's where we learn about Muhammad. So if they're going to argue with me that Muhammad is a prophet, well, I need to know something about him, and you just threw out your own sources.
So the argument for textual preservation is only for the Quran.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing with the average Muslim layperson, when they're taught to read the Quran, they're not really taught like we're taught in the Bible to read, consider context, think through what it says. Aren't they more taught to recite it as opposed to think through these kinds of things? Or the average layperson, not necessarily scholarly or whatever. Is that the case? How they?
There are Muslims who have the entire Quran memorized. And can't tell you anything about it, can't give you any historical background. There are Muslims who memorize the entire Quran in Arabic and can't speak Arabic. You can say, quote me Surah 66, and they'll recite it for you in Arabic and have no clue what they're saying. So yes, there isn't the same emphasis, not for the layperson. So yeah.